okay, so the thing I was saying was, now imagine, let's pretend that Greta, her autism, let's make a wild assumption it has something to do with being a Neanderthal or having a Neanderthal bias. So you'd think like, well, there's a lot of emotion going on there. There's hypersensitivity. Um, uh, it's kind of like having an acute hearing. So, we're talking high sensitivity hearing. You have high sensitivity to emotions. It's kind of like, super hearing and super emotions. I imagine that Neanderthals probably had very acute sense of feeling. And so then you would have Cro-Magnons have a kind of dampened emotive state. So they not far more reactive, far more flamboyant, but the reactions are far more shallow. So, okay, since we're just doing stereotypes, look, apologize to anybody's ethnic background, but I think we at this stage we've got to forget about political correctness. So, okay, I'm going to use Italians as an example. Sorry if you're an Italian, but now the stereotype of an Italian family is they're all, everybody's around the table, a lot of noise, a lot of reaction, a lot of emotion and stuff. And then most people would say they're Italianesque, they're Romanesque, they're very emotional. And say, like, in a way, it's shallow emotion, right? It's very ephemeral on the top. I imagine someone like Greta is feeling far, far more emotions, but they're not expressed, right? Inside, she's boiling in a way, and I don't think most Italians I know will ever come on the boil. It just comes out. The minute something, they don't accumulate their emotions. You just, like, if it's there, bang, they let it out. So I think it basically, somebody like Greta is accumulating a lot of emotions. I think basically because if I'm right about the Neanderthal connection, they would be very, very solitary. They wouldn't have that much stimulus. And so they wouldn't accumulate that much emotions. The kind of emotional environment that they were in would be very sparse. Now, I hope this is all making sense. I'll use one more kind of racist, very politically incorrect analogy to explain it. But people struggle with this. It's kind of like this idea that it looks very muted means that you have a hyper response to it. So people say, "Oh, you don't feel a lot of emotions." No, there's somebody like Greta is like feeling intense emotions off the chart because she's highly attuned to emotion. But it looks like dull effect. A lot of psychologists even could make this mistake, and they're saying we're looking at this autistic person. They have dull effect. They don't have deep emotion. It's like so fucking wrong. The way to describe it here in the politically incorrect way, as an anecdote, I was in the Caribbean, and with this woman, and she is saying it's fantastic. These Caribbeans, these islanders have such a fantastic sense of color. Look at all these bright primary colors. Just like it's amazing, their sense of color. And I said to her, no, they actually have an attenuated sense of color. She says, no, look at these colors. It's like these people, fantastic. I said, no, they're almost colorblind. They have to have the color turned up so damn high just so they can see in color. Basically, their color perceptions is attenuated. That's why the Caribbeans are bright and colorful. If you go to somebody in like somewhere in Northern Europe, say in Brittany or somewhere, and they'll have all these muted colors and pastels and all these gray shades, you'll say, oh, this person doesn't have a sense of color. Yeah, they've got an extreme sense of color. That's why everything looks so muted. They can see color tones that you can only dream of in the same room. And so that's something I say about often people misunderstand about, say, a Greta. Just one more example that while I was thinking of it, it just suddenly popped into mind. But I had a fantastic experience with this guy who had a glass company, and I was kind of getting into this project on glass, and he said to me, like, yeah, well, it's all about the quality of the bottle and stuff. He says, like, look at these bottles. You see, if I did this bottle here, I would go out of business. It's got to be a perfect one like that. Look at these two bottles, and they're absolutely identical. And I said, look, I'm so sorry to be such a noob, but I look at these and I said, what's the difference? And he said, oh, God. He said, can't you see it? It drives me nuts. Look at this. And he showed me, he said, like, look, this has more iron in it. Can't you see? It's like, a millionth of a tone greener. And eventually, after a long time in the glass industry, I could actually start to see what are you saying? I never got to the stage where I look at these two bottles and go, oh, this is repulsive. Oh, get this away from me. I got to the stage where I could at least tell which bottle. But to the average dude, the average consumer that's going to pick up this container off the shelf, they're absolutely totally deaf to his keen insight to a thing. So the reason I wanted to say that is because we're talking about feelings. And so often people that we'd think were repressed, basically hermits and not very feeling people, then they're going, like just happened. They're going to do a lone wolf attack and blow something up. And he's like, well, he was a bit strange, but we never thought he was, do that. And it's like, well, of course he's doing that, because he's feeling shit that basically the average, blah, 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 blah guy that says, oh, you're so emotional, and says, no, he's not emotional at all. He's just reactive. It's water off a duck's back. Emotions are just dripping off him. He's not really emotional. The other guy is emotional because he's attuned to the entire planet. Every time he sees a dead bee, it's like affecting him. And, he's building up this accumulated angst that is just radiating out of our destructive society, while everybody else is getting deafer. So people are getting deafer and deafer and deafer. Their emotions are getting attuned. They're getting hyperstimulated by movies, and it's just an escalation of hyperstimulation. And now I can see, by going to sea, this is often a topic of discussion with sailors, is how long it takes you to detox from normal society. And basically, I've been at sea for about 4 years. The old timers tell me it takes you 5 years before you start feeling like a human being, and I'm starting to see it now. But when you start to detox and gradually get your feelings and emotions, and you start to get attuned to nature and the environment again, when you have people that come from cities on board, they're almost like deaf, and it's almost like having Helen Keller on board. So they're almost like deaf and blind, and basically they're always distracted. They're not really there. They're like half listening to you, half on the phone. Yeah, go on, I'm listening. He's like, there's nobody there, is there? They all go like, I'm listening, and then I just wait, and I just sit there, and then eventually they go, huh? Oh yeah, you were saying, it's like talking to a kind of a mentally disturbed child, and you can see people in the Western world are getting more and more that way. So they're getting deaf. Their emotions are getting attuned, and it's a very dangerous situation to get to, because they need to get into a Nuremberg rally. People need to get into a riot just to feel something now. The epidemics of people cutting themselves, of burning themselves with cigarettes, self-harm, and what those people are doing is they're understimulated, so they need that kind of level of hurt in their reptilian brain and their fish brain, just to feel that they have a spinal cord. So this is a real danger for society, because it's a form of PTSD. What people don't understand about people that come back from, say, Iraq or a war zone, and they have PTSD, what the person's problem is, they get accustomed to too much stimulus. When they come back into normal society and they come back to their wives and a domestic situation, it's too bland. It's too boring. They're going out of their minds in a kind of isolation chamber. And they will stir up trouble. They'll stir up fights just so they can feel something. They can. It takes a lot to get them to revive their adrenaline and stuff like that. It's almost like their pancreas is packed out. And so that's one of the problems of PTSD. Now, if we go into a situation where there's mass unrest, people are already getting PTSD from COVID, and lockdowns and things like that. So there's a deficit to pay, because people are being attenuated on the one side to all these manic movies and hyperstimulus in this virtual realm. They go, oh, alien cortex is massively overstimulated, and then we're going into a period of social unrest where people will get their stimulation from you basically throwing Molotov cocktails on the streets. And so that becomes a source of entertainment. Now, you see how people in that environment, they can never go back to nature. Nature's just too fucking boring. So they'll never get to that higher intellect. They'll never get to that oceanic feeling. When they look at seagulls and stuff, and they like, okay, and then when does the action start? Okay, roundabout now, Rambo should come in and shoot these seagulls. It's like they can't just sit in this beautiful nature. They just lost. It's a tragedy. But anyway, I say it as a warning. I can't tell people how bad this is. And psychologists and psychiatrists, they're getting overwhelmed because they don't have the tools. They don't have the understanding to deal with this. All the ideas are some crap bullshit that came out of Freud and stuff, and silly experiments with mechanical Turk and stuff. But anyway, they're kind of completely out of their depth as we go into collapse. So yeah, be your own guru, and also you're gonna have to sort out your own psychotherapy. So, well, more than you wanted there, Gary. Sorry.
Well, actually, we've been going for a fair while. Maybe we should wind it up in a minute and make a part 2 or something. But yeah, I was thinking, did you ever see a film called Why Has the Bodhidharma Gone to the East? It was a very sort of peaceful thing set in the Korean mountains with this old monk and a younger disciple. And it's quite long, and there's basically no action in it. And you just had me thinking about that, because I remember when I watched it once on YouTube, and I noticed that one of the comments said that they had to turn the movie off because they couldn't identify anything was going on. And yet the movie was just absolutely rich with meaning and significance. But they just, whatever it was, couldn't handle it. There was no stimulation there. They wanted action, noise, blah, blah, blah. But also, as I've complained to you at other times, when you put a post on Reddit and you illustrate it with a video, the difference between the video Hugh would choose, it's got action, it's got violence, it's in your face, it's really, and I think I can't watch your stuff. It overloads me. I gotta, and it just had me thinking about that for a minute.
I'm genuinely trying to overload people, right? So basically, I'm okay. I'm telling you basically where you probably should be in terms of preparing people for what's coming. Basically, they need to feel it's a lot shitter than it actually is. Basically, it's kind of like blood on the training field saves. They say like sweat on the training field saves blood on the battlefield. So basically, you got all these liberals here. I haven't got a damn clue about completely head up their ass about what we're heading into. And so my aim is to make it seem worse than it is, so that basically you want to be a bit desensitized when you're going into the firing line, right? So yeah, that's the flip side of what I was saying is that yeah,
Yeah, but the problem is, though, for the people who aren't, I've got to be blunt, for the people like me, it's just like a hell of a lot to handle. You get over affected by it.
you see this, you see what's the best way to handle it is to give in, right? To give up to it. So what I'm doing is I'm basically overstimulating you, so that at some stage it's not a question of becoming feeling deaf or tone deaf or anything like that. It's a question of detaching from what you're feeling. So part of the it's not like hypersensitivity is not a negative thing. So part of higher intellect and higher feeling can be it's acutely sensitive. So you can get to a stage, and you will if you if you carry on with this, where you could hear a piece of music like, say, Vivaldi or something like that, and be in absolute fucking agony, have tears streaming down your face. You can it's almost like being tortured on a rack, and it's absolutely divine. It's absolutely ecstasy. So what I'm saying is that the hypersensitivity to feelings is not something to avoid or control or something like that. It's saying it's just to detach from them, so that it's almost like you have a proxy and a kind of you've deputized your body to be the instrument to feel all this stuff for you, and then you can go to places which you could never go as a scared little rabbit, right? So you don't want to say like, oh, I want to protect myself as a scared little rabbit, don't scare me, Hugh. And saying no, I'm saying like, I'm trying to get you to detach from your inner scared little rabbit. And so you're saying like, I'm not trying to toughen the rabbit up. I'm trying to say the rabbit must be as sensitive as it is. The sensitive, the better. But doing these exercises, and particularly coming all the way back to Sophie's exercise, if you do it in terms of the layered brain, you will be able to detach from it. So it won't overwhelm you. And you can get closer to what I think neurologists would say is kind of an epileptic fit. It's like frontal lobe epilepsy. But you can get closer and closer into those McKenna type realms that he gets to with LSD. You don't want to do it with LSD, because you that is fucking up your receptors. Basically, the only way you'll be able to do this, if you use LSD to get there, is the only way you'll be able to get there is with LSD, and you'll reach a stop. You do not want to go down that path. So, but you want to get to that state of psychedelic experience, but with yourself, right? You want to get there with your own neurochemicals. It's the same neurochemicals, you're just ingesting. But if you generate them internally, that's an entirely different thing. And then basically you're not reliant on an outside source that's an adjunct to your feelings. Your feelings are doing the job. It's kind of like retiring your own workforce and bringing in consultants and contractors to do the work for you. It's kind of like outsourcing your feelings. If taking LSD or a drug is kind of like outsourcing your experience to a drug. You're saying, no, we manufacture this shit at home, buy American, I make my own LSD, fuck off, McKenna. And then, so how you generate that LSD is, well, you have to be sensitized, but detached. So it's kind of like a capacitor. You need to have a bigger and bigger capacitor. So you've got a super capacitor that you can take an incredible current going through your feelings. Does that make any sense at all, or did I mix too many analogies with electronics and neurology?
No, it does. I think we're going to have to expand this a little bit more. in the next one. Um,
Yeah, but we covered
yeah,
a
I
lot of
was just
systems,
thinking of.
didn't we?
I was thinking about something that Alan Watts said, and I think he might have been talking about the same thing about, an intense emotional response, and how, people will change their lives around to avoid feeling that, and go through all sorts of contortions to avoid getting themselves in a certain situation where they get a bad feeling. And he said, well, look, he said, if you go into it, what are you getting? You're getting this feeling in the pit of your stomach, this sensation, this churning, this unpleasant thing. He said, if that's the worst that this situation can do to you, then what's your problem? Just, you're aware of it, but you don't have to change your course of existence. You just I'm just thinking that kind of uh, I guess that's what you mean by being detached from it. That
Yeah.
it's there, you acknowledge it, and you know what it is, but you don't necessarily have to change anything on account of it.
Yes. Yes. So
Uh,
think of it like this. Imagine a guy in Afghanistan. He's a squad. He's been posted to Afghanistan. He's hyper stimulated, hyper aware, hyper vigilant. He's getting shot at and stuff. Basically, okay, but he's got no training on spirituality. He's got no training on mindfulness and stuff like that. What he's doing is becoming more and more of a video game. He's becoming more and more deafened to the thing. He's taking a lot of adrenaline. He's wiring up his brain with that amount of adrenaline. So in the adrenaline excessive mode, he's wiring up his brains. A Hebbian response. When people shoot at him, that wires up his brain full of adrenaline. Basically, neurons that fire together wire together, and now they're wiring together with adrenaline, so they can't fire anymore unless he has adrenaline. And so really he's a really sorry case. Now that's the normal, and that's what the average guy comes back traumatized with PTSD from Afghanistan. That's what would happen. Now imagine that this guy was trained by a Zen warrior. The guru would teach him that basically you must feel the bullets when they come whistling past you and they crack. Basically that you must feel every crack. You must feel every sound wave of that. When you fire, you must basically get. And you see, he's getting into a thing where he's wiring up much more neurons. Basically, he's in a gunfight, and basically the bullets whistling around, but he is hypersensitive to everything. It's almost like it goes into slow motion. While the bullets are going, he can see a leaf, rustling. These tiny little things, and it's almost like it's going into this kind of surreal slow motion thing. Now, you see how different that state of mind is. Now, that state of mind that the guy's going into, if I described it right, is ataraxia. It's kind of an extreme self-detachment. Now, when that guy goes into nature, he's hyper attuned. Basically, he would go into nature, and every leaf that rustled and stuff, it would be like he was in a battle situation. He could walk on a mountain trail and be so stimulated in a good way that the smells, this just kind of overwhelming, blissful, oceanic feeling just walking in a forest. You can come back that way from Afghanistan, but only if some teacher told you how to do it right. And that's what they were doing. That's the way of the warrior, in fact. But see the difference, the huge difference. One is getting deaf from the sound, the stimulus, getting more and more deaf, and one's getting more and more expansive, more and more attuned, and more integrated with hyperstimulus. So completely different. But anyway, well, that was a long session. I'm sorry I kind of wore you out, but there wasn't a way to cut that off.
so that's what we're to do. That will be the approach to the world the way it is now.
Yeah, well,
That
think about
everything's
it. Think about what I'm saying, and then come back and tell me if you
Yeah.
if you can
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying. But in the meantime, I'd say as a practical exercise, do Sophie's exercise that she wrote down, but attribute each feeling you have to a layer in your brain. Try and see if you can see what that layer is, and it would be really good if you could just see there and try and think, where is it? Is it here? Where is it? Is it here? You know, just get that detailed. So like, where? You know, I know intellectually that this is part of my reptilian brain, but like, where's my amygdala? Where am I feeling that? Get into that kind of detail, and then tell us what happens. Okay, well, we better cut it off there. I'm sorry, went on so long.
No, thanks for that. That's great.
Good.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, if I don't see you through the week, I'll see you through the window.
All right. Thanks very much, Hugh. That was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Bye. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.